The topic today is exclusion, is leaving no one behind. And therefore, we need to start by understanding better what is poverty. I'm going to show you how we can, as development cooperation practitioners, as we can start to fight poverty by looking at the details and by seeing the vulnerable people and by building their resilience. From 1990 to 2015, the proportion of people living in extreme poverty was reduced from 37% to 10%. But however, in 2015, there were still 735 million people living in extreme poverty. 735 million people. This graph shows the total world population between 1820 and 2015. In green, you see the number of people that do not live in extreme poverty, and in red, the number of people living in extreme poverty, hence with an equivalent of less than $1.9 per day. This historical look at poverty should bring optimism. And actually it does give a lot of encouragement to the population. In the 1800s, almost everyone lived in extreme poverty. The world has seen dramatic progress in poverty alleviation, particularly in recent decades, even though the population has increased so dramatically as well. This historical development shows us that it is possible to reduce extreme poverty. Now, it is on us to end extreme poverty as soon as possible. Now, while this reduction is a major achievement, it is still unacceptable that every 10th person in the world lives in extreme poverty. Now, this extreme poverty is not spread over the world in a very even way. In spite of this overall progress in poverty reduction, we see that extreme poverty is highly concentrated in some world regions, mainly sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. Now, this concentration of poverty in Africa is a rather recent phenomenon. In 1990, more than 1 billion of the extremely poor lived in China and India alone. Since then, those economies have grown faster than many of the richest countries in the world and did much to a reduction of global inequality. The concentration of the world's poorest shifted from East Asia in the 1990s to South Asia in the following decade, and now it has shifted to sub-Saharan Africa. The projections suggest the geographic concentration of extreme poverty is likely to continue. According to the World Bank forecasts, 87% of the world's poorest, 87% of the world's poorest are expected to live in sub-Saharan Africa in 2030 if economic growth follows the trajectory over the recent past. So far, we have mainly talked about poverty in financial terms by focusing on income or consumption available per person per day. But poverty is a multi-dimensional concept. It involves different areas of deprivation. It is not just about GDP or how much money you earn. It is also about education. It is about health and many other things, as we will see later on. This graph shows that the share of the world population dying and surviving the first 5 years of life. So you can see that the green part is the part that survives, and the red part is the children, unfortunately, that die or tragically that die before the age of 5 years. Now, again, here in this subject also, there's a lot of challenges remaining. Here you can see the inequalities spread across the world again, similarly to the previous map. This is in 2017, and you see that challenges remain. Still 4% of all children globally die before reaching the age of 5, which means that on average, 15,000 children die every day. That is far too much. But if you look at this map, you can see that large inequalities exist worldwide. Countries where children are most likely to die before the age of 5 are countries such as Somalia, Chad, Central African Republic, Sierra Leone, Nigeria, and Mali. One of the strong elements that led to the 2030 Agenda on Sustainable Development was the experience that which the international community made with the Millennium Development Goals through the time from the year 2000 to 2015. We learned many things, but one that we learned is that actually it's good for us as a global community to set goals and targets for us, and then to measure these targets and to move forward and to encourage each other as countries to reach these targets. The Millennium Development Goals was all about averages. But in the Agenda 2030, there is this promise to leave no one behind. This is a fundamental paradigm shift, because during the Millennium Development Goals era, the idea was still very much that if a country becomes richer, sooner or later, everybody will become richer. This whole idea of the trickle-down effect, you see, if a country improves, the poverty will be reduced for everybody. There is some truth to this, but as we saw from that graphic about the inequalities, inequalities are increasing, including in some of the countries that made the best progress on poverty reduction. So the paradigm shift is to promise to leave no one behind, which means that while we have to work to be efficient, meaning make the best use of the money that we have, of the resources that we have, we also have to work with the most vulnerable people. And we're going to come more into this later on. And the strategic question that I want to ask, that I'm going to want you to ask yourself with regard to this paradigm shift is, do I know who the most vulnerable people are? The program that I am leading, does this program know who the most vulnerable people are? Does the organization that I work with, do we know who the most vulnerable people are? And are we systematically building their resilience? While the logic of the Millennium Development Goals was still very much a logic of accountability of those who receive to those who give, the SDGs are all about accountability of the state to its people. In order for the Sustainable Development Goals to be realized, they have to become a social contract between the state and their people. That means that countries have to take the lead, and national resources have to be mobilized, and the national budgets have to be aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. An additional novelty of the Sustainable Development Goals is this fundamental pledge, is the promise to leave no one behind. It's a central pledge of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development.